Krishna, Danwar Pranam dear devotees. So we are gonna start reading Srila Prabhupada books from today onwards, and we are gonna read in a sequence. That is, first we are gonna start with On the Way to Krishna, and then Elevation to Krishna Consciousness, then Krishna Consciousness, the Matchless Gift, and in this way we are gonna progress forward. So I hope you will be listening these audios which will be uploaded on weekly basis. These are just readings of Srila Prabhupada books which are very transcendental, because Srila Prabhupada books are obviously very transcendental. So this is the first chapter of On the Way to Krishna, chapter 1, Through Way to Happiness. Every one of us is searching after happiness, but we do not know what real happiness is. We see so much advertised about happiness, but practically speaking we see so few happy people. This is because so few people know that the platform of real happiness is beyond temporary things. It is this real happiness that is described in the Bhagavad Gita by Lord Krishna to Arjuna. Happiness is generally perceived through our senses. A stone, for instance, has no senses and cannot perceive happiness and distress. Developed consciousness can perceive happiness and distress more intensely than undeveloped consciousness. Trees have consciousness, but it is not developed. Trees may stand for a long time in all kinds of weather, but they have no way of perceiving miseries. If a human being were asked to stand like a tree for only 3 days or even less, he would not be able to tolerate it. The conclusion is that every living being feels happiness or distress according to the degree of development of his consciousness. The happiness that we are experiencing in the material world is not real happiness. If one asks a tree, "Are you feeling happy?" the tree, if it could, might say, "Yes, I am happy, standing here all year. I am enjoying the wind and snowfall very much," etc. This may be enjoyed by the tree, but for the human being it is a very low standard of enjoyment. There are different kinds and grades of living entities, and their conceptions and perceptions of happiness are also of all different types and grades. Although one animal may see that another animal is being slaughtered, he will go right on chewing grass, for he has no knowledge to understand that he may be next. He is thinking that he is happy, but at the next moment he may be slaughtered. In this way, there are different degrees of happiness, yet of all of them, what is the highest happiness? Sri Krishna tells Arjuna, "Sukham atyantikam yattad buddhigrayam atindriyam veti yatra na chaivayam sthitaschalati tattvata." In that joyous state, samadhi, one is situated in boundless transcendental happiness, realized through transcendental senses. Established thus, one never departs from the truth. Gita 6.21. Buddhi means intelligence. One has to be intelligent if he wants to enjoy. Animals do not have really developed intelligence and so cannot enjoy life as a human being can. The hands, the nose, the eyes, the other sense organs, and all the bodily parts may be present on a dead man, but he cannot enjoy. Why not? The enjoying energy, the spiritual spark, has left, and therefore the body has no power. If one looks further into the matter with a little intelligence, he can understand that it was not the body that was enjoying at all, but the small spiritual spark that was within. Although one may think that he is enjoying by these bodily sense organs, the real enjoyer is that spiritual spark. That spark always has the potency of enjoyment, but it is not always manifest due to being covered by the material tabernacle. Although we may not be aware of it, it is not possible for the body to experience enjoyment without the presence of the spiritual spark. If a man is offered the dead body of a beautiful woman, will he accept it? No, because the spiritual spark has moved out of the body. Not only was it enjoying within the body, but it was maintaining the body. When that spark leaves the body simply deteriorates. So, when that spark leaves, the body simply deteriorates. When that spark leaves, the body simply deteriorates. It follows that if the spirit is enjoying, it must have its senses also. Otherwise, how can it enjoy? The Vedas confirm that the spirit soul, although atomic in size, is the actual enjoying agent. It is not possible to measure the soul, but that is not to say that it is without measurement. An object may seem to us to be no bigger than a point and may seem to have no length or width. But when we perceive it under a microscope, we can see that it has both length and width. Uh, Similarly, the soul also has its dimensions, but we cannot perceive them. When we buy a suit or dress, it is made to fit the body. The spiritual spark must have form, otherwise, how is it the material body has grown to accommodate it? The conclusion is that the spiritual spark is not impersonal, it is an actual person. God is an actual person, and the spiritual spark, being a fragmental part of Him, is also a person. If the Father has personality and individuality, the Son also has them. And if the Son has them, we can conclude that the Father has them. So, how can we, as sons of God, assert our personality and individuality and at the same time deny them to our Father, the Supreme Lord? Atindriyam means that we have to transcend these material senses before we can appreciate real happiness. Ramante yogino anante satyananda chid atmani. The yogis who are aspiring after spiritual life are also tasting enjoyment by focusing on the super soul within. If there is no pleasure, if there is no enjoyment, then what is the point of going to so much trouble to control the senses? What kind of pleasure are the yogis relishing if they are taking so much trouble? That pleasure is ananta, endless. Okay. How is this? The spirit soul is eternal, and the Supreme Lord is eternal. Therefore, reciprocation of the loving exchanges is eternal. One who is actually intelligent will refrain from the flickering sensual enjoyment of this material body and fix his enjoyment in spiritual life. His participation in spiritual life with the Supreme Lord is called Rasa Leela. We have often heard of Krishna's Rasa Leela with the cowherd goats in Vrindavana. That is not like ordinary exchanges that take place between these material bodies. Rather, it is an exchange of feelings through spiritual bodies. One has to be somewhat intelligent to understand this. For a foolish man who cannot understand what real happiness is, seeks happiness in this material world. In India, there is the story of a man who did not know what sugarcane was and was told that it was very sweet to chew. Oh, what does it look like? He asked. It looks like just a bamboo rod, someone said. So the foolish man began to chew all kinds of bamboo rods. How can he begin to experience the sweetness of sugar cane? Similarly, we are trying to get happiness and pleasure, but we are trying for them by chewing this material body. Therefore, there is no happiness and no pleasure. For the time being, there may be some little feeling of pleasure, but that is not actual pleasure, for it is flashing in the sky. For it is temporary. It is like a show of lightning which we may see flashing in the sky that may momentarily seem like lightning, but the real lightning is beyond that, because a person does not really know what happiness is. He deviates from real happiness. The process for establishing oneself in real happiness is this process of Krishna consciousness. By Krishna consciousness, we can gradually develop our real intelligence and naturally enjoy realizing spiritual happiness as we make spiritual progress. As we begin to realize spiritual happiness, we proportionately abandon material happiness. As we make progress in understanding the absolute truth, we naturally become detached from this false happiness. If somehow or other one is promoted to that stage of Krishna consciousness, what is the result? Yam labdva cha param labham manyate nadhikam tataha yasmin sito na dukhena gurunapi vichalyate. Upon gaining this, he thinks there is no greater gain. Being situated in such a position, one is never shaken, even in the midst of greatest difficulty. Gita 6.22. When one attains that stage, other achievements appear insignificant. In this material world, we are trying to achieve so many things: riches, women, fame, beauty, knowledge, etc. But as soon as we are situated in Krishna consciousness, we think, oh, no achievement is better than this. Krishna consciousness is so potent that a little taste can save one from the greatest danger. As one begins to realize the taste of Krishna consciousness, he begins to see other so-called enjoyments and attainments as flat and tasteless. And if one is situated firmly in Krishna consciousness, the greatest danger cannot disturb him. There are so many dangers in life because the material world is a place of danger. We tend to close our eyes to this, and because we are foolish, we try to adjust to these dangers. We may have many dangerous moments in our lives, but if we are training ourselves in Krishna consciousness and preaching ourselves and preparing ourselves to go home back to Godhead, we will not care for them. Our attitude will then be, dangers come and go, so let them happen. It is very difficult to make this kind of adjustment as long as one is on the materialistic platform and is identifying with the gross body, which is composed of perishable elements. But the more one advances in Krishna consciousness, the more he becomes free from bodily designations and this material entanglement. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the material world is compared to a great ocean. Within this material universe, there are millions and billions of planets floating in space. And we can just imagine how many Atlantic and Pacific oceans are there. In fact, the whole material universe is likened to a great ocean of misery, an ocean of birth and death. In order to cross this great ocean of nescience, a strong boat is needed, and that strong boat is the lotus feet of Krishna. We should immediately get aboard that boat. We should immediately get aboard that boat. We should not hesitate, thinking that Krishna's feet are very small. The whole universe is simply residing on his leg. For one who takes shelter of his feet, it is said that the material universe is no more significant than a puddle of water found in the impression of a calf's hoofprint. There is certainly no difficulty in crossing over such a small puddle. Tam vidya dukha samyoga viyogam yoga samgnitam. This indeed is actual freedom from all miseries arising from material contact. Gita 6.23. We are entangled in this material world due to uncontrolled senses. The yoga process is meant to control these senses. If somehow we can manage to control the senses, we can turn our face to actual spiritual happiness and make our lives successful. Sa nishchayena yuktavyo yogo anirvinna chetasha sankalpa prabhavan kamams tyaktva sarvana sheshataha manasaivendriya gramam viniyam ya samantataha sanay ruparamid buddhyavriti grihitaya आत्मसंस्थं मनः कृत्वा न किञ्चिदपि चिन्तयेत् यतो निश्चलति मनश्चञ्चलम् अस्थिरं ततस्ततो नियम्यैतद् आत्मनि एव वशं नयेत्. One should engage oneself in the practice of yoga with undeviating determination and faith, and not be deviated from the path. One should abandon, without exception, all material desires, born of mental speculation, and thus control all the senses on all sides by the mind. Gradually, step by step, with full conviction, one should become situated in trance by means of intelligence, sustained by full conviction, and thus the mind should be fixed on the self alone and should think of nothing else. From wherever the mind wanders due to its flickering and unsteady nature, one must certainly withdraw it and bring it back under the control of the self. Gita 6.24 to 26. The mind is always disturbed. It is going sometimes this way and sometimes that way. By yoga practice, we literally drag the mind to Krishna consciousness. The mind strays from Krishna consciousness to so many exterior objects because from time immemorial, life after life, that has been our practice. Due to this, there may be great difficulty in the beginning when one tries to fix his mind in Krishna consciousness, but these difficulties can all be overcome. It is because the mind is agitated and not fixed on Krishna that it goes from one thought to another. For instance, when we are engaged in work, memories of events that happened 10, 20, 30 or 40 years ago may suddenly come to our mind for no apparent reason. These thoughts come from our subconscious, and because they are always rising, the mind is always agitated. If we agitate a lake or a pond, all the mud from the bottom comes to the surface. Similarly, when the mind is agitated, so many thoughts arise from the subconscious that have been stored there over the years. If we do not disturb a pond, the mud will settle to the bottom. This yoga process is the means to quiet the mind and allow all these thoughts to settle. For this reason, there are so many rules and regulations to follow in order to keep the mind from becoming agitated. If we follow the rules and regulations, gradually the mind will come under control. There are so many don'ts and so many do's, and if one is serious about training the mind, he has to follow them. If he acts whimsically, what is the possibility of the mind being controlled? When the mind is finally trained to the point where it will think of nothing but Krishna, it will attain peace and will become very tranquil. Prasanta manasam hi enam yoginam sukhamuttamam upaite santa rajasam brahma bhuta kalmasham. The yogi whose mind is fixed on me verily attains the highest perfection of transcendental happiness. He is beyond the mode of passion, he realizes his qualitative identity with the Supreme, and thus he is freed from all reactions to past deeds. Gita 6.27. The mind is always concocting objects for happiness. I am always thinking, this will make me happy, or that will make me happy. Happiness is here, happiness is there. In this way, the mind is taking us anywhere and everywhere. It is as though we are riding on a chariot behind an unbridled horse. We have no power over where we are going, but can only sit in horror and watch helplessly. As soon as the mind is engaged in the process of Krishna consciousness, specifically by chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, then the wild horses of the mind will gradually come under our control. We must engage in Krishna's service every moment of our lives in order to keep the restless and turbulent mind from dragging us from one object to another in a vain search for happiness in the temporary material world. Yunjannevam sadatmanam yogi vigata kalmasha sukhena brahma samsparsham atyantam sukhamashnute. Thus the self-controlled yogi, constantly engaged in yoga practice, becomes free from all material contamination and achieves the highest stage of perfect happiness in transcendental loving service to the Lord. Gita 6.28. Krishna serves as a patron for one who is devoted to him. When one is in difficulty, his patron saves him. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is the real friend of every living entity, and we have to revive our friendship with him. The method for reviving this friendship is the process of Krishna consciousness. By practice of Krishna consciousness, mundane passionate hankering will come to a stop. This passionate hankering keeps us divorced from Krishna. Krishna is within us and is waiting for us to turn to him. But we are too busy passionately eating the fruits of the tree of material desire. This passionate compulsion to enjoy these fruits must stop, and we must situate ourselves in our real identity as Brahman, pure spirit. Hare Krishna. So the first chapter is over. We have read the first chapter, and I think it took about, okay, let me check how much time it took. So it almost took 18 minutes, not 30 minutes, so very fast. Okay, so we're gonna stop here, and next week we're gonna read the second chapter of On the Way to Krishna, a really beautiful book. And the point I like very much in this book is the happiness thing mentioned over here. And one more thing, I will come to that. So the one thing I like very much, not the most I can say, but very much, the way Srila Prabhupada is quoting like verses from Gita and so beautifully presenting it in the way so that we can get happiness. Like he said, we are always searching after happiness anywhere, everywhere. But we do that in a vain search of happiness. It is like a vain search. We don't get it. Someone is addicted to illicit sex. Someone is addicted to alcohol, intoxicants, and so and so. Someone is addicted to meat eating. Someone is addicted to, you can say, some other illicit association and other things. Like, so many things are there. So many things, but people, they simply go in a vain search of happiness. They don't get the real happiness. So what is this real happiness? That is samadhi, as Srila Prabhupada gave 6.21 Bhagavad Gita. You can also read that on Vedabase. Link will be given below, or you can buy Bhagavad Gita as it is by the link given below. If you don't have that, most probably I think all of you have who are listening these audio. Anyways, so this is where he states samadhi. Samadhi means God consciousness, when you are immersed in the thoughts, not in the thoughts, when you are immersed in Krishna consciousness, you are totally conscious of God. That is simply, you can say, God consciousness. But who is God? How does he look? And so many things are there. We don't know. But the description is given in Brahma Samhita. So many things to mention. And Srila Prabhupada also mentions that how good this is, in the sense you are going to feel ecstatic bliss, obviously, as it is mentioned here in Samadhi, and you are not gonna take away from the truth. Truth in the sense of the absolute truth. You are not gonna go away from it. You are gonna feel like this happiness is so great, other happiness is nothing in front of this. So in fact it is very great. And more things, like the more thing I liked is the description given over there, that just like we wear a suit or a dress, so there are measurements for it, right? We have to give our measurements for it, and then we can wear. Otherwise, how is it possible? The tailor cannot make it if we don't give our measurements. So similarly, this body has grown to accommodate the soul. So if this is how the body has grown, that means the soul certainly has a size and a shape, just that it is not visible to us, it is not perceived simply by the material senses. Our body has grown, like just you wear a suit, your body has some measurements. Otherwise, how can you wear a suit? Similarly, this body is like a cloth or a suit. So this body has a size and a shape. It is grown like that. It is growing like that to accommodate the soul, right? So soul must have a size and a shape. But the thing is that the soul is very minute in the material world. Why? Because in the material world, the soul is kind of shrinked, or you can say not shrinked, but because it was in the spiritual world enjoying with the Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, but now it is like the soul is in darkness of ignorance, in the Maya, in material nature. So soul is bound, and that is why the soul appears very small. But actually the real beauty or the real full-fledged form of the soul is revealed when you achieve the perfection and you actually get to know about your real spiritual identity. Who are you with the relation to Krishna? What is your relation with Krishna? Is it in the parental mood of affection, or is it in the friendship mood, or is it in the servitor mood, or is it in the mood of awe and reverence, or is it in the mood of lover and beloved? So you have to know about these things. So, but since we are in the material world, captured or bound by Maya, so that is why we are unable. We are conditioned by Maya. So that is why we are unable to perceive ourselves, our real spiritual identity. So many things, and this is one of the very beautiful things Srila Prabhupada mentions, and more things he mentions. Just like if we, as the sons, as we already know, Krishna says, Aham bija pradhaprita, and in one more shloka in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Aham bija pradhaprita means he is the seed of all the existence in this sense. And he says that pradhaprita, pita means father, so he is the seed giving father. So he says this. And again he says that Bijam Mam Sarvabhutanam, that is in Bhagavad Gita chapter 7, text number 10. So many mentions of Krishna as the father, and also in the Bible and other books also we get these things, that how God is the father. But in our Krishna consciousness, we have got this conception that we can actually not only have the father-son relation, but more than that. But since here Prabhupada is talking about father-son relation, he says that if a father has certain qualities, the son will also have them, right? The son also has them. So similarly, if we, being the son of God or whatever, we must have the qualities of God. So since we are personal, we are having a form, we appear as if we are having a form, so must God also have a form, because we must inherit the qualities of the Father, right? So if God is our Father, that is certainly He is declaring loudly in Bhagavad Gita that He is our Father, seed-giving Father. So we must accept that, and we must understand that since we are His sons, we are also having the qualities of Him, but in a minute matter somewhere. But we also have His qualities. So since He has a form, we also have a form. So in the vice versa we can say, if we have a form, God also has a form, because we have inherited it from Him. So this logic is totally, transcendental. It's very nice to understand, and also a kind of argument to the Mayavadis or the voidists who say that God is void, you are void, we are void, we are all impersonal, we don't have real personality, we are just bound by Maya, and so many things. But this one is really a good analogy to understand God. Now one might say that you are giving material analogies, and God is also mrudva. That means God is incomparable. There is no comparison to God. So how can you give material comparison to God? The simple answer to this is that since we are having a material body, we are in the material condition, so we cannot understand spiritual things easily. So to make ourselves understand the material, to make ourselves understand a spiritual topic, we cannot understand. So that is why we are getting the material analogy, right? So our material mind cannot accept something spiritual; it does not understand. So that is why material analogy is given. Otherwise, it is not required. Obviously, you can accept the things as it is from the bona fide source. And Prabhupada gives the example in one of his lectures where one asked him that, okay, you are giving these analogies, but these analogies, God is awesome, moreover, no comparison of God, then why are you giving material comparisons of God, which are no way in comparison with God? And Srila Prabhupada said that, yeah, nowhere there is comparison of God with the material things, but the thing is that our minds are material, and our material minds cannot understand spiritual things. That is why our material minds need material analogies. So, a very good reply by Srila Prabhupada, that why are we giving so many material analogies like father-son relation, then cloth, sweet example, dress, all these examples. They are material analogies. So why is this? So Prabhupada explains that since you are material, your mind is material, you cannot accept spiritual simply. So that is why we are giving a material analogies so that you understand the spiritual world and understand the spiritual concepts. So this is also a great one. And the whole incident is not mentioned in this book. That is mentioned in another book that is called Chant and Be Happy. You can search in internet, you will get that online also, and offline stores in the Hare Krishna centers in ISKCON. You can get them. Get the book Chant and Be Happy. That book is really great to read. Yes. So I gave a small kind of commentary, and many more things Srila Prabhupada he gave in this book, like intelligence. You need to be intelligent to discriminate, and that way you can perceive happiness in a better manner. So similarly, we have got this intelligence to discriminate between what is higher and a lower happiness. So we already got to know that samadhi, that is God consciousness, perfection in God consciousness is the highest perfection, is the highest happiness. So if we have this intellect, if we do have this idea, we can go and search in the past history who has perfected Krishna consciousness, God consciousness, and understand how much blissful he is. And then if you see that, we can understand and compare with our intelligence that the material happiness which we are perceiving is nothing. Because whenever you are actually in Krishna consciousness, the worldly pains and miseries and pleasures, anything won't be any effective thing against you. So you would be like, these things are nothing for me. Krishna consciousness, it's all. And other bodily pleasures and happiness will be like a very, very small thing for you. So that is why we have to use this real intelligence, that how powerful this Krishna consciousness is, how pleasurable this is, how blissful this is. That is why it has been explained by Srila Prabhupada that other things, Krishna himself explained this in Bhagavad Gita, that when you are in the samadhi, when you are in God consciousness, perfected God consciousness, you will never shake away from the truth, and it's pretty good. No, that is why you will feel like other happinesses are nothing in front of this. So we had a long talk after 18 minutes, right? So it's half an hour almost, and we're going to stop here. Thanks for listening all this, and Hare Krishna.